All right, so today we're going to go over some introduction and background info on a story called The Odyssey, which is the next book we're going to read a modified version of. So, the Odyssey is about the gods and religious customs or centers around it of ancient Greece. So, the Greeks believed completely in the existence of gods and goddesses. That is where they put all of their faith, their hope, and they felt that their whole life revolved around the moods and acts of these gods. So, they were polytheistic. They believed that gods took an active interest in human life, that the gods were acting like humans, they had human characteristics, and they would watch over humans and decide what would happen to each family, each group, every event that happened in your life. So it was important for them to have respect for the gods because if you anchored the gods, they believed that it could be basically your downfall, your ruin, and even your death. Greek culture is also known for hero worship. So the hero could be the founder of your town, it could be a historical figure, it could be just a war hero. So many things could, or so many people could be considered heroes, but these were people that they really put up on a pedestal, they idolized and they worshiped like they were like the super fans of the time. Greeks also believed, as part of their religion, in monsters and other mythical creatures. And all of these creatures right here, you will see in the Odyssey. And we'll kind of learn more about them. But they all were ones that could cause you harm. And so they were kind of like the bad guys of the stories back then. So, some background info. Um, the Odyssey is an epic, which means a long narrative poem about a national or legendary hero. Um, Ancient Greece had two epics that they are quite famous for. Most people have heard of both of these because they're these long stories about war and about the war hero. And they're the Iliad and the Odyssey. They actually kind of go together. Like I said, we're going to be reading the Odyssey. Both of those stories were written by a man named Homer. No, not Homer Simpson, but this Homer that is in the statue here. He was a blind man who I believe dictated most of his stories to somebody so they could write them down. But they don't have any real information about his birth date, where he was born, any of that. He's kind of a mystery for most purposes. So, the background info of the Odyssey, it takes place during the Trojan War. So, the legend surrounding the Trojan War was war began after Paris, that's a man, he was the Prince of Troy, kidnapped Helen, who was believed to be the most beautiful woman in the world. The problem is, Helen is married to King Menelaus, who's the king of Sparta. And if you know anything about ancient Greece, you know the Spartans were not the ones to mess with, or the Spartans were not the ones to mess with. These were fierce warriors. They started their kids training for war by age 5, and they meant business. So basically, Paris, the Prince of Troy, has kidnapped the queen of the most dangerous city-state civilization in Greece at the time. And Menelaus is obviously not happy. He wants his wife back. His pride is hurt because that's embarrassing to see your wife kidnapped and you're supposed to be this tough warrior. So he starts building up an army. And he finds a man named Odysseus as a soldier in his army. This is not the real Paris and Helen. Obviously, there were no cameras back then, but there have been many movies made about this. So those are actors playing the part. So the story goes Odysseus, he's the king of Ithaca, which is a smaller city state. And he goes off, and the Greeks battled the Trojans for 10 years in order to try and get Helen back. But they are not having much success. And so Odysseus comes up with a plan that he's going to trick the Trojans. And basically, he says, and we'll go into more detail with this on the Greek unit, But he says, sorry, you're right. We were wrong. We give up. We're going to leave. And he has most of his ships set sail and leave. And the Trojans see this. But as an apology gift, he leaves this giant wooden horse as like a statue, as a way for Troy to always remember this battle, this war that they've won. And most of the Trojans were super stoked about this statue. They couldn't wait to get it in the city gates as a symbol of this. There were a few, especially the princess, who was like, hey guys, this feels a little too easy, a little too good to be true. Maybe we not bring the horse inside. But they did it anyway. And in the middle of the night, Odysseus and his men jumped out from inside the horse and just like started killing people left and right. It was a surprise attack, and it definitely worked. So the Greeks were able to win the war. So this story was written around 750 BC, but it actually takes place about 500 years earlier. So ancient Greek values are seen throughout this story. First of all, intelligence, highly prized. That is something that they looked at for all their heroes and for honor. Glory, that's the equivalent to fame. War stories, people that achieved glory during their life were given like special privileges in the afterlife. These are the heroes. Hospitality. They believe strongly in helping other people, offering food and shelter and protection to people without even questioning why they needed it. You don't have food? I don't need to know why. Here's a meal. That kind of attitude. It was important to be hospitable even if you didn't want to be. It's your enemy. He doesn't have food. You don't have to ask why. You just have to help. It's often wondered, did they do this out of the kindness of their hearts because they just were generous and they felt like they should take care of everyone? Or did they do it because they were afraid that the gods might get mad if they didn't and they would be punished, which makes it a more selfish reason. But either way, they believed strongly in hospitality. They also believed in loyalty to your family, to your community, to the gods, and bravery. These are all things that went into what it took to be a hero, and they're all things that we're going to discuss as we read the story. So in the Odyssey, Homer starts off by talking about the last days of the Trojan War and what kind of ended it. And the man responsible for the fall of Troy is Odysseus, as I said, the Trojan horse story. He came up with it. And because Odysseus was instrumental in Troy's destruction, he has angered the gods because it is believed that the gods were like playing games with this. They really wanted Troy to win. And so when Odysseus has thwarted their plans and he has won, now the gods are like, that's not the outcome we wanted. And they are super angry. So the gods vow that they're going to make sure that Odysseus has the worst journey home. So angry Zeus is angry. So the journey back, because they want it to be so long, takes about 10 years to get back home. Shouldn't have taken that long. I think they say that it was supposed to be about a year, but it took them 10 years to get home. And that is what the Odyssey is about. The Odyssey is this long journey about what it takes to get home. So Odysseus and his men will encounter many dangers, which make it very difficult. They're going to have monsters, women who try to like kidnap them and keep them away. But somehow Odysseus always finds a way to get out of it. He's intelligent and clever. He's got quick thinking, all these things that we talk about with a hero. He's brave. He epitomizes what it means to be a hero in Greek culture. And so that is what happens with the Odyssey, and that sets it up so you can better understand as we read.